K Flock is one of the most influential artists to ever come off the streets of the Bronx. Many say he was next to blow and become a huge nationwide star, but a series of events led to his horrible crash out, including being hit with a massive RICO indictment and weapons and murders charges. A couple of months earlier, Flock had just signed an 8-figure deal with Capitol Records. His songs and videos had millions of views, and his fame and notoriety was growing day by day. For a Bronx kid barely out of his teens, this should have been a dream come true. However, this dream would turn into a hellish nightmare. On a cold, brisk December 16th morning, everything changed for Flock. As Flock was walking deep in enemy territory belonging to the Old Wise gang, he passed a barbershop full of his ops. One of them spotted him walking by and confronted Flock for being in his neighborhood. After this confrontation ensued, the confrontation left Oscar Hernandez shot dead and K Flock on a run for murder. There are 4 main gangs that are a very intricate piece to this story, and these gangs are the Young Gunners, the YGs, the Original Goons, the OGs, the Original Youngins or the Original Young Gangsters, the OYs, and the YBs, the Young Bosses, or as they're known as now, the Southside DOAs. I'm gonna give you guys the origin of how this war started and birthed one of the most notorious evers of our lifetime, this Bronx drill shit. It all started around 2003-2004 when a man named Jew Hef created the YGs out of the Mahaven projects. The Bronx always had street gangs throughout the 1960s and 70s, but things really turned up when NY Bloods formed in the prison system in 93 and the Latin Kings and other name-brand gangs started taking over the town. Homegrown gangs got played out, and everyone wanted to be a Blood or a Crip or one of the other Spanish more known gangs. But a boy named Jew Hef went against the grain and started his own gang called the YGs. He linked up with a childhood friend named Charlie Rock from Patterson Projects, and the YGs spread throughout the Bronx like wildfire. I seen this firsthand coming up. I went to school with many of the first generation gunners. Everyone wanted to be down with YGs as opposed to Bloods, Crips, etc. It became so popular that people that was already Bloods and Crips began to claim YG as well. As YG started spreading throughout the city, it went from Mahaven to Patterson, from Patterson to Cortland, from Cortland now to the surrounding projects around Cortland like Melrose Projects, Jackson Projects, all that. It even ended up in River Park Towers and even other neighborhoods and surrounding projects around the Bronx. YG started to get so big that it started to leak outside of the Bronx and into Harlem. Some of the smaller gangs that was already in Harlem had to band together to fight the YGs, and this created the OYs coming out of Sugar Hill. The most ironic part of this story is that many of the guys in this war were cool with each other and were family, but eternal conflict would tear all bonds apart. As the gang started to get too big, eternal conflict made everything self-destruct. One crucial moment of this happening was with the Cortland Ave YGs. They were their own set and they called themselves YGFC, other known as God's Favorite Children. This set of YGs was one of the most ruthless back in the day, and their undisputed leader is none other than Melly Mel Baller. Melly was top 5 leader and somehow got into it with some of the Mahaven YGs. He took the gang and broke off from YG altogether after that. They started their own new gang called the OGs, standing for Original Goons. The Original Goons became like the Hoovers of the Bronx. All the surrounding area was YG. They had to fend for themselves. They didn't have no allies, very slim to none allies. And I call them the Original Hoovers of the Bronx because in Cali, the Hoovers actually broke away from the Crips and became everybody killers. Everybody that was around in the surrounding areas of the Hoovers, they got beef with. And this became so for the OGs. In my opinion, they were like the first EBKs out the Bronx without calling themselves that, for real, yo. All the surrounding projects and hoods around them are YGs, and they went to war with anybody around them. The Bronx at this time became a deadly wild, wild west. But as all this was going on, the police would slowly be building a case on every gang in the city. Also, karma will come around and claim her taken. On September 13th in 2013, everything would start to crumble, beginning with Jew Hef being killed in a nightclub called the Tropicana in the Bronx. He was hit in the head with a hookah, and after he died and his death got out, all the OGs would make social media posts mocking his death, further putting fire on the war. But the war would come to a boiling point when a couple of YG gang members started arguing one day over who would put in the most work and who did this and who did that. So they decided to settle the argument and go to Cortland Ave and try to catch a Cortland member lacking, or OG's member lacking. So they all gathered up, they went to Cortland, and they spotted a 16-year-old member named Noah Ballin. Noah was just chilling that day with his boy or whatever, and he spotted the YGs creeping up on him. They both tried to run, but Noah, as he tried to run, he broke his leg. And when the YGs caught up with him, they stomped him to death. This event sent shockwaves throughout the city. Noah became like Tucker to Chicago. Everybody was smoking on Noah and all of that. He became the poster child for this shit. The YGs that did it got locked up, and this caused a huge gang sweep throughout the whole city of the Bronx and eventually the whole city of New York. Melly Mel Baller, the leader of the OGs, eventually got hit with a RICO and got sent away for life for murder. This created a vacuum for the new generation to seize power and spill all their pain and sorrows into the music, and this birthed the NY Drill culture as we know it. But after that brief history on how this all started, I want to give y'all the backstory on K Flock and where we at with the story today. Now, K Flock was born Kevin Perez on April 20th, 2003 on the uptown side of the Bronx. At this time, the section of the Bronx was full of YBs, and they called themselves the Hilltop Bosses. Their main enemies were YGs, and they still are today. They hate YGs. I always wonder what happened to the YBs. During the 2010s and late 2010s, you stopped hearing from them. But now, from doing my research, I found out that K Flock actually changed the name from YBs to Southside DOAs, and that's what they go by now. They don't go by YBs like that no more. It's all Southside DOAs. But Flock, he became entrenched with this gang life. He lived for spending on ops, all while doing it on live and on social media. Him and his friends would go out hunting for ops on a daily before he started doing his music shit, even after when he started doing the music shit. But as Flock continued to gangbang, his friends that he was cool with began rapping. These friends included Dougie B, B Love, E-Dot Baby, and Shy-Ek. E-Dot and Shy-Ek would blow and start to do numbers. They was from the OY gang who Flock currently has beef with now. In the beginning, everyone was cool, all too familiar to the story. But then the disagreements started, and the disses and petty beefs separated everybody. It was said that K Flock waged war on E-Dot and Shy because he seen him on live one day smoking with one of his ops. He made everybody pick a side, and this made the streets go into a frenzy, you heard? K Flock's main man, Dougie B, eventually got locked up and eventually came home and started rapping. He started dissing the ops immediately. His vids and music started doing millions of views, and in 2020, K Flock started doing music as well. He took off instantly. K Flock seen this as another opportunity to get at his ops since he was already putting in pain in the streets. He released his first track called FTO, and the streets started bubbling. Once Dougie B was officially home, he got on a track with him, K Flock, and B Love, and they recorded a track called Brotherly Love, and it was history from there. Once the millions of views started coming in, other YG gang members started emerging as well to get revenge and diss back for all the pain that they was hearing on these tracks. Some of these rappers included D-Thang, who was a YG from RBT, and this guy's actually cousins was Flock. Raji's from one of Flock's most hated 800 set of YGs, and others. All over the Bronx, new drill artists started popping up out of nowhere, dissing dead ops and trying to get clout, trying to get into the game. It was alleged that Raji was involved in a murder of one of Flock's crew the previous year before. The two became mortal enemies and taunted each other every chance that they got. Things would come to an end when Raji's was shot to death while he was sitting in a cab. A guy pulled up, two guys at that pulled up on a scooter and shot Raji's in the head while he was sitting in the back of the cab. When news of Rod's killing hit the hood, Flock and the whole South Side rejoiced, and Flock's infamy grew even more. All this would come to a head and come full circle when a former friend turned enemy from the Harlem Old Wise, E-Dot Baby, was found shot dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. It was said that E-Dot shot himself in the head, and he was only 17 years old. Flock mocked E-Dot's death after his passing on live and on social media. The old wise were infuriated, wrapping it up to where we are today with this story. After getting $1 million record deal and just basically on top of the world, K Flock thought he was untouchable. He went to the ops hood, spent the block, and they caught him lacking, or they tried to catch him lacking, and he caught them lacking, you dig? He walked past the barbershop. The niggas inside the barbershop saw him. They approached him. A conflict ensued, and it left Oscar Hernandez dead. And then K-Flock was on a run for murder. He got eventually locked up, and a couple of weeks ago, he was just charged with a RICO indictment. So it's not looking good for K-Flock, but hopefully he'll beat all charges, man. That was a quick story on K-Flock, the Bronx assassin, man.